Welcome to lesson 7 of the Alchemical Cabala, the cube of space, the current of Teth, strength, the principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. The Kabbalion. Okay. So we are now beginning another 7-week cycle in which we will navigate around the cube of space again for 6 consecutive weeks. Only this time we will take a different route as a different set of currents that form the cube of space. So here is a picture to show which 6 currents we will be traveling over the next 6 weeks. And we will be repeating the pattern of immersing ourselves into one current or path per week. We will keep the same pattern of visualizing the key every night for 6 nights, starting with our eyes open, then visualizing the Hebrew letter associated with that key as we close our eyes and visualize that key with our eyes closed. We will also remember to write down anything that occurs to us in our journals throughout the week. Right. So here at our new beginning, we find ourselves once again at the northeast corner, the above corner of the cube of space. Only this time, instead of descending, we're going to stay on the above side of the current, the self-conscious side. And we're going to travel from the east to the west along the north above current of Teth, the path of Teth, which is the strength key in tarot. Before we go any further, I'll just show you here. We're going to then, the next week, we're going to descend down the path of justice from above to below. And then we're going to follow the path of iron, again, to the south on the below. The next week, we're going to, instead of ascending up noon, we're going to stay below and we're going to travel along the current of the moon, Kof. The 5th week, we're going to travel up the path of the teacher. And then we'll finish again by traveling back to where we started along the path of the lovers once more. Is that a little more understandable, what we're doing now? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Excellent. Okay, here's our key for the week. This is the strength key of tarot. So the name of this intelligence is called the intelligence of the secret of all spiritual activities. That's a pretty intriguing name for this intelligence. Particularly interesting is that it says all spiritual activities. The 8th statement of the truth about the self is, I look forward with confidence to the perfect realization of the eternal splendor of the limitless light. This key on the cube of space connects the above self-consciousness To the north, the tower, the key of spiritual awakening. So this key, the strength key, connects our self-conscious mind to the key of spiritual awakening. Let's muse for a moment. I would like people to just share what comes to them. What does it mean to be awake to you?
Conscious, present, aware, present time.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, can you speak up? Did anyone else have something to share? No? Okay.
To be awake is to recognize where you are.
Yes.
It's not just, you know, you've had 2 cups of coffee and now I'm awake.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Right.
I wish it was that easy.
Yeah, it's to recognize the operation. You want to say I want to say the operation of the sun.
Wow.
Yeah, because your strength is that recognition, that being awake, ability to ask and to remember to ask for more information from creation.
Yes. Yes.
All we have
Thank
to do
you.
is ask for information.
Thank you.
Show me more. Tell me more. We have to be curious, but we have to
Tell
be
me more.
awake.
You're right. We do have to be awake to wonder and ask that, don't we?
We're not just being shown stuff. It's not like flying through, you know, streaming through your iPad or whatever. It's it's like, oh, how many images can I look at? No. I want that image to tell me all about itself.
Yes. Yes.
And
Perfect.
show me. And that's a real eye-opener, because when creation speaks to you, it will show you, but you have to stop and be quiet. And she's totally relaxed. Look how relaxed she is. And surrounded by love. Those are the roses, active. So she's very awake and relaxed. And everything of nature, all of nature, which is roaring here, is perfectly comfortable at her fingertips.
Nice.
So you said earlier, the universe is so vast, and we have the ability to see it all. We just have to ask. Yes. Show me more.
Show me more. Absolutely.
Be a kid. Be a kid in a candy store and you want to see all the chocolates.
Yes. Thank you, Margot. That is wonderful and excellent.
Yeah.
So, yeah, to be awake is good. Life is good, right? So to be aware of our awareness in the present is a great place to learn to maintain our self-consciousness. To be able to do this with proficiency, it is absolutely essential for us to have some mastery of concentration and staying present in our awake consciousness, moment to moment to moment to moment. To that end, the orange exercise is an incredibly useful exercise and really can't be overstated how helpful this exercise is to develop the ability to keep the mind where you want to keep it in the present, right? You can find that exercise on Margot's gatesoflight.com. I think it's gates dash, or is it
the
gates?
dash
Yeah,
gates dash of dash light
yeah,
.com.
.com. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's on there if you need to review it. Highly recommend everyone do this. It's one of the most useful things you will ever do for yourself. It's get familiar with the orange exercise. It's really an amazing tool. So try to incorporate this exercise regularly with consistency, at least daily, 6 days a week. Okay. The the payoff is totally worth it. Okay. It's just totally worth it. So back to this key. Seeing the name of the intelligence of this key, which is the secret of all spiritual activities, and its place on the cube, where it connects the magician self-consciousness to the key of the tower spiritual awakening, and where it's positioned on the tree itself, where it connects the sphere of mercy and volition, and makes up the entire higher mental plane on the simple tree. Those three things combined suggest that this key is really worth our attention and working with. All right. Let's see here. Find this. There we go. Okay. From the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, regarding the path of Teth, we read, the 19th path is the intelligence of all the activities of the spiritual beings, and is so called because of the affluence diffused by it from the most high blessing and most exalted sublime glory. In Jewels of the Wise, we read of this path on page 109. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, all thy strength, and all thy mind. Matthew 22:37. The strength key shows us the lion of Leo of the zodiac. And in Christian mysticism, this is the Lion of Judah, which rules the heart. Modern medicine has not long ago come to understand that the structure of the physical heart is that of a vortex or spiral. This is sometimes called the helical heart. In Hebrew, the letter Teth means serpent, and it has the same numerical value as the Hebrew word for Messiah. Recall on our previous current that we were working, the Lover's Key, before our lovely Christmas break, that behind our subconscious aspect of Eve, we see the serpent rising up the tree here. On the cube, the current of the lovers is on the above east, and it flows into the path of Teth, the serpent, on the above side of the cube of space. Here's an excerpt from the Book of Tokens by Paul Case on Teth. This serpent is the serpent of temptation, yet from it cometh forth redemption. For the serpent is the first appearance of the anointed one, and that which casteth Adam out from the garden of the east, even that shall bring him back once more to paradise. This is the oil which riseth like a serpent, the oil which thy father Jacob poured upon the stone in the house of strength. Verily, he who knoweth the secret of that stone knoweth also the secret of the serpent, and in him shall be fulfilled the saying, when Israel was a child, then I loved him, and called my son out of Egypt. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. John 3:14. Now, we might be familiar with the reading of the Bible in the New Testament of how when the Christ is speaking through the Master Jesus, he speaks of the man Jesus as, quote, the Son of Man. The serpent on the Tav or cross, in here is Teth, is a sign of healing. This is the subtle force of the astral light within our interior subtle bodies, known in the East as the Kundalini. We connect with this through our breath and our attention, which is again why virtually every tradition starts by us learning to focus our awareness on our breathing. In reality, this force is the exact same force that animates everything. Everything. Your breathing, everything that we do. All the time. So let's look at this imagery. The first thing we notice, I love the simplicity of this key. It's a beautiful, beautiful key. So we know that we follow the pattern, the colors on the tree, and we look at their imports, right, when we're reading the tarot. And it gives us an idea for the intellect to see. So the first thing that occurs to us is the main figure here is in white. So we can discern that the divine self is active in the subconscious aspect seen here. The feminine aspect here is taming the nature of the wild animal aspect of our being. Seen here is the lion with all its natural tastes and instincts. This is the red lion that is our life force. We see that she has taken roses from the magician's garden, both above him and below, and she's woven them into this beautiful figure 8. She holds this whole lion with the gentleness of a dove in complete and total control. The master told us to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves. So on the main figure 8 wreath here, how many roses do we see?
10.
Yes, 10. That's correct. That's what I count as well. We see 10 on the main luminescent here. So that's interesting, right? Because we know that in the Book of Wisdom, there are 0 accidents. There's nothing perchance or haphazard here. Right. And we see these little buds forming on her crown. How many are those?
6.
6.
Yeah, 6. Okay. So one message here is that repetition and rhythm are aspects of strength. When it comes to matters concerning our animal natures, one of my teachers told me simply be gentle but firm when we're dealing with ourself, our own drives, instincts, desires, these things. Be gentle but firm, unyielding to the passions of the animal nature when it is not in our best interest. We control our animal. It doesn't run the show. When we are out of control, we are letting the animal nature run the show. That said, it's imperative that we do not ever cut off our animal nature's desire. It's super important to not do that. Okay, we want to keep the whatever desires arise from our nature, from our animal nature, we work with them. We allow them to be what they are. If we try to suppress them, that's how we create shadow materials and divisions within ourselves and cut parts of ourselves off from other parts of ourselves. And then we get to work all that out later. Okay. There's a whole giant movement and in this work as well. We get to do that because we have done that, right? The world teaches us that's bad, don't do that. And so we're like, okay, so we suppress it. We're like, I'm not that. Nope, that's not me. No, sir. No. No, you must have somebody else, right? But it's us. um we have to be pretty honest with ourselves about how we are and have a good sense of humor about it, okay? Because we're all pretty much in the same boat when it comes to what we get in our animal nature. So remember, we simply choose to be gentle but firm with ourselves. Remember this statement, the wise person follows the middle path, meaning we don't go to extremes on either direction. We treat our animal bodies with kindness and love, like we would our beloved animal friends we get to live with. We take good care of them, right? We make sure they have plenty of sunshine and fresh water and all the good stuff. It's an art to be balanced and still disciplined with ourselves. So patience is key here, persistence and patience. All right, we're coming back to this suite. All right. I love this diagram. This is the simple tree of life. We're going to review it again. It's really interesting. We talk about balance. Notice that of the 3 main paths that are horizontal on the tree of life, right? The strength key is the middle path on the horizontal steps here. Is that clear to everyone? You got the tower key down here. The strength key is in the middle, and then the empress key is up here. So she's balanced on the horizontal path of the tree. And it connects, the strength key connects severity and mercy. This path makes up the entire fifth plane on the simple tree of life, which is called the higher mental plane. So let's briefly review the simple tree here. We have the 10 spheres and the 7 planes. And this is all aimed at knowing ourself, understanding ourself. At the bottom, we have the physical plane of Malkut. This is our physical body. This is everything we can see with our physical senses. The next sphere above this is the astral plane. In Kabbalah, this is sometimes called the sphere or the storehouse of images. It's where our vital soul is and where we tend to hang out when we're dreaming. It's the foundation of the tree and the moon sphere. Then the 8th sphere is our intellect, our thoughts, and it's balanced on the tree by our desires, Venus. Those two combined comprise the lower mental sphere, or the lower mental plane. What's important to note about this is these 4 lower spheres here comprise what's basically we know of as our personality. Everything about our personality is basically contained in these 4 lower spheres. And they're below the central self, which is the real I. So when we say I anything, this is where we're speaking from the heart of our core of our being. This is our self that the divine self is connected to, our sonship of our creator, our divine self. It's the reflection in our Christ center. So the higher mental plane, the path, the current that we'll be working with now is up here above this. And it connects volition or action with memory or mercy. One of the keys, one of the goals that we're working to do in all of this is to have all of these 4 lower spheres, our thoughts, our feelings, our dreams, and our flesh be in harmony with our true self in the sun here. That's why these spheres are below this sphere on the tree of life. And the path we're working on now, the strength key, makes up the entire higher mental plane. So everything below this sphere is basically personal. And the higher up we go up the tree, the less, quote, personal things become. But understand that doesn't mean they become less real to us. If anything, they become more real to us. Because they're more aligned with our divinity. All of this whole tree is our divinity. There's nothing not divine. All is divine. So looking at this simple tree, I would like anyone to just kind of muse on what your thoughts might be on why this plane is called the lower mental plane, and the key we're working with is called the higher mental plane. What occurs to you as possibly why those planes are labeled that?
It seems to me that from the lower viewpoint, we could have a lot of mental patterns that actually don't work in our long-term interest, subconscious habits, but above the central plane into the higher mental plane, we're receiving impressions and guidance from the high self, from the divine self.
Yeah, excellent. Excellent. We know one of the symbols, right, of the sun is the Star of David, right? As above, so below. And the top of the tree represents the divine or the macrocosm, right? And the lower area of the tree is the microcosm. And here at the Christ center is where we are balanced between the above and the below. So yeah. So the lower mental plane is basically comprised of our personality, right? As we are incarnated. And the higher mental plane, as you said, is closer to the divine, which makes sense, right? It's also closer to the causal plane. So if you haven't memorized this simple tree, please make a copy of it and have it at your bedside when you do your studies. Just integrating this tree will allow you to better integrate any tree that you choose to work with down the road. Having a grounding in this tree for the Western mind is exceedingly helpful because it makes things more accessible to our Western trained mind. Okay, so when it comes to the strength key, the main lesson here to tame our animal instincts is to use love repeatedly and with consistency. This is how we acquire proficiency and mastery of our lower natures. This is not always fun or comfortable. Not always. Understand that we have to be patient and consistent, and we must not ignore the need to develop our skill of concentration. Also know that when we say lower nature, we don't mean lesser, as in inferior to like not as good as or not as spiritual, right? It's really easy for us to kind of judge these things like, oh, that's bad. That's, that's just the way the world has taught us to see things. But that's not the case. The whole tree is divine. All is one, and all will return to one. It technically never left. And all is working together to help us evolve and learn to grow in love as we become more aware of our whole self. The designations of higher and lower aspects of our being is simply one of appropriate ordering of our whole self as human beings and spiritual beings, with each aspect operating in its appropriate and intended sphere of influence. We want to have an understanding of where our consciousness is operating on the tree of life. I believe Margot said very well earlier, to be awake is to know where we are. Okay. These are the tools to help us do that, so that we're not stuck in this automatic, unconscious action reaction cycle. And once we find ourselves in and become aware of our automatic unconscious actions, the beauty and the magic of this is, guess what? That is no longer unconscious. Now we are conscious of being unconscious. Now we're waking up. Now we see all of the patterns moment to moment that we find our life force moving through, moving into the world in all the patterns. A huge, giant red flag for you is anything that repeats for you, anything that has repetition for you as a recurring pattern. You've got a lot of life force operating in that. So is it working for you? And is it something that you willed or were in alignment with your divine will to have be? And if not, just become more conscious of it. The moment we become conscious is the moment we align ourselves with the actual divine will. Consciously. We're always in it. It's just the difference of what level of awakening are we awake? It's really that simple. So we need our animal's nature and its drives. We need this to live in the world, okay? And to assist us in our spiritual path. It assists us to evolve. And our animal nature needs us for the exact reciprocal reasons. As human beings, we've embodied all the levels below the physical of the human form within ourselves, from the mineral to the plant to the animal and the human. And as we are evolving into our next level of our being, we become more receptive to our spiritual being. No matter what discipline or path one is working, the key is always persistence, patience, and a rhythm of loving, self-conscious repetition. So this week, look at your own spiritual practice throughout the day. We're ending this year in the Western world and about to begin a new one. So this is an excellent time to shed the skin of what no longer serves us and to simplify and resolve to establish patterns of loving consistency in our spiritual work and self-discipline. We've all experienced the satisfaction of making progress from a consistent practice of whatever type, even if it's a small amount of time. No matter what our goals are or have been, the key is to live our lives day to day, moment to moment, in thought and word and deed, according to the values of our true self. The strength key is associated with taste. Repetition through our senses develops our taste for things in and outside of the world, depending on where we place our attention repeatedly. Is everyone familiar with this image? No? Oh, good. Has anyone seen this image before?
You just showed it to us.
Okay, perfect. I love it. Living in the present. Thank you. Okay. This is, okay, so this is called an analemma.
Okay.
Right? And what this is, you get this image if you stand in the exact same place and take a picture of the sun at the exact same time of day throughout the year.
Oh, so that's a picture of the sun.
Yes, this is the sun as it's moving through our horizon, through our sky, your living being sky that is you. This is the actual pictures of our actual sun, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it makes this pattern consistently all across the world. It varies a little in like angles and whatnot, but more or less, virtually everywhere you stand in the world, if you go out and take a picture of the sun at the same time of day, once a week, and you line up 52 suns of your photographs all together, this is the picture. This is what you're going to get. You're going to get a figure eight, a luminescent, an analemma.
Very nice.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
So, knowing this, here is Our Lady's strength.
There it is over her head.
Yes. We see the symbol over her head. Above her head is a crown. And it's the pattern of the chain of roses around her waist and the lion. Now we know that we are using the astral light, the light of the stars, particularly our central star, our sun, in all of our activities. It is the source of our activity and all of our strength. As above, so below, as without, so within. Now imagine the strength that comes from practicing the same spiritual practices every day at the same time of day, weekly, monthly, and so on. Our subconscious will recognize this pattern and start to work more automatically, assisting us in our endeavors when we give it consistent and repeated messaging. It must be in thought and word and deed. And these three must align in harmony. It's too common for people to begin an effort with good intentions and then be thrown off by the chaos that the world sometimes presents to us. It's not uncommon to experience even more turmoil or chaos periodically when we set out to increase our light by spiritual work. Just if you're not already familiar with that, understand that that is not uncommon. This is our environment reacting to the increased spiritual vibrations that are coming through us. So here we weave together our desires in harmony by our thoughts, words, and deeds. On the simple tree again, remember this path balances memory and action. Establishing ourselves day to day will build strength as our memory is reinforced by repetition. The animal nature in the strength key applies to all of our animal drives. We don't suppress our animal drives or tastes or its emotions. We don't judge our emotions as bad or unspiritual, even if they are not what we prefer, especially if they're not the emotions we prefer to be experiencing. We simply transform this energy through our actions as we aim towards our higher intentions. So, for example, if we experience anger and we simply use that energy towards what we are intending to accomplish, while gently keeping our mind on our higher self, seen in the strength key as light itself. Being angry is not unspiritual. It's being human. We can look more deeply at maybe why we might be triggered to have these emotions. But our intention is to never suppress our feelings and to not let them run the show. Remember, alchemy is the art of transmutation. And remember, the sphere of the feelings is the seventh sphere on the tree, which is below the sun. And we all have preconceptions about how virtually almost everything is supposed to be. That's perfectly fine. That's what we get when we get the human being package. It goes with the whole thing. When we align ourselves with the truth as it is, or at least to the best degree we can just accept what is, we will experience an increase in light and power. Staying present is key to not losing control of our animal nature. The more present we can stay to what is occurring, we will experience more of the higher self working through us to master our lower nature. All right. So this is the 3x7 layout, and it's the first column of spiritual unfoldment. On it, we see the strength key in the middle, balancing the magician, our self-conscious mind above, and she's balancing and overseeing the patterns of our identification of ourself with our animal consciousness down here, seen as the deceiver key. Our self and subconscious aspects in the deceiver key are operating from a state of automatic consciousness, with virtually no questioning or discerning what is appearing or occurring to them in the world. Again, I'm repeating what Margot said. Staying awake seems to question, where are we? What is happening? Show me more. This key is, oh, I guess that's what is. Like we know anything. I mean, but that's how we tend to get through the world, right? It's like, oh yeah, I know this. I mean, we got to do that to get to work, to do the things, but always question what we're seeing. We don't want to stay in this first stage of spiritual unfoldment, right? We want to wake up from the appearances that we think that we know what they are or what we see in the world. So a simple reading of this column and the strength key in particular shows us where we place our attention repeatedly influences and affects the appearances that we see in the world. Here's a really good example. You've probably heard it many times. Like you go and you buy a new car, and all of a sudden, you see this car virtually everywhere you go. You're like, I didn't know there were so many cars like this, right? That's a pretty common experience. So what's happening there? Well, the person we're identified with getting this car. And now because we see ourself virtually everywhere, we recognize this pattern that we've now identified ourselves with as this car. And now we see it everywhere. It becomes part of our self-recognition as our identity. The spiritual path in a nutshell might be considered one of re-identification of the self from our lower self on the tree of life to our divine self, our whole self. It is the beginning of our work to focus on what we desire to have made manifest and to not focus on that which we don't want to manifest in our world. By this practice, we develop strength. The more we are able to consciously choose where our attention is going, the more we influence how our world appears and what appears in it. It is that simple. This takes effort on our part and a willingness to let go of holding any others accountable for our state of consciousness. This is owning every aspect of our thoughts, words, and deeds, which leads us to liberation. Because we are living in harmony and integrity with our word, with our being, what we choose, what we say. One last note here. Remember, in Kabbalah, we act as if we are doing the work, but we acknowledge that it is the holy guardian angel or the Christ that is actually doing all things through us. So here's to establishing more strength of the self in our patterns we will create and establish in this coming new year. And that concludes lesson 7 of the Alchemical Cabala. The floor is open for any questions or comments.
One of the things that's very important is by stepping on this path, by doing this, you attract to you what you need to fulfill it. That's the grace. That's the love of our Creator who loves us. No matter how much we're idiots, it loves us. And so it can sound like, oh, this is work. I have to constantly do this or that. The reality is, if you set yourself this pattern, the things that make that pattern that you want in your life will come to you, and it gets easier.
Yeah.
It does. It has a sense of, and communicating with creation is a two-way street. So as we become curious about our Creator and creation and within ourselves, our Creator communicates with us. So it opens this whole door. So you are not just getting an understanding at an intellectual level, you are getting it at a visceral level. And it's a lot of fun. That's when it becomes really fun. So being curious about this. And the animal nature, I was noticing there's a little cat in one of these, you're holding a little cat. And you ever watch a cat check out a mouse in a mouse hole and look at things and run around? What's going on in there? We have to reignite that curiosity within ourselves, because we kind of take things for granted. And that's the patterns Eli's talking about. You change the patterns because, that looks kind of cool. I never saw that. I got to go check that out. And he's sharing with us ways to do that will make our lives blossom into this communication with our Creator. It's absolutely delightful, Eli.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, this is wonderful.